I guess in academic research, for a long time, particular voices have sort of dominated it. And with that, there's kind of inequalities embedded within that. So you get the privilege of particular types of voices that, are gendered, race, classed, associated with place, disability, all of those things, and then the intersections of those. So I think in terms of the knowledge we produce and making that more equitable, we need a kind of diversity of voices in those institutions where the knowledge is produced, but we also need them involved in all aspects of the research process.
I think the very obvious thing, first of all, is that we've recognised that there is no one grand meta-narrative, and you can't explain the social world with one grand meta-narrative. You certainly can't explain diverse peoples and their perspectives using one grand meta-narrative. And we've known, we know that attempts to frame people with a meta-narrative or one way of knowledge or one way of gaining knowledge, it in itself leads to pathological tropes and misrepresentations and stereotypes. And on one level, these are very persistent stereotypes as well. It's very difficult once a stereotype has been established to counter that. And at its worst, we know that these kinds of stereotypes, they are epistemological forms of violence, and they actually also have led and are leading to and currently are in operation in terms of physical violence in order to maintain a certain form of order by those who yield the most power over these narratives. So I think it's really important that we do understand knowledge from different perspectives. We do recognize that there are many varied forms of knowledge and ways of being.
Obviously, my first answer is it's going to be a member of academia, specifically from a Western university, almost certainly male, probably white, probably, I don't know necessarily about what their age would be, but it would definitely be kind of above, say, the age of 25, for example. And they are almost certainly not disabled. They're probably straight. All that. It's kind of everything that we would think of in terms of privilege they would probably have. And that obviously doesn't necessarily mean that their knowledge is of lesser value. It's that this is one type of knowledge and we've got a lot of it, in terms of a huge amount of the knowledge base that we have is going to reflect that position.
Well, we're looking at, again, the impact, the long-term impact of colonialist mindsets and colonialist forms of knowledge gathering, and then that form of knowledge gathering being used to impose control over subjugated peoples. And again, because I just mentioned it, there is the violence that is inherent within those forms of knowledge gathering, and then in the ways that that form of knowledge has been used to subjugate people. And one of the kind of, I suppose, if I'm gonna maybe give a particular example, is the very clear distinction between secular forms of knowledge and non-secular forms of knowledge, and the fact that the Western rationalist thought is rooted within these secularist forms of knowledge, and they inherently position any other form of knowledge that is not westernized and secular as inferior in some shape or form. If we look at the kind of multiple traditions of spiritualism, of religion, of connections that people have with the land, which are in, very kind of spiritual. These are all things and ways of being that are routinely denigrated and presented as less than, as somehow inferior. And we need to question why. The Western world is not in the majority as a number. I think Edward Said said something to that effect, but there seems to be an assumption that the Western world or the Western mind has a right to know and control knowledge about the other. And I think that's deeply problematic.